So I've been seeing so many red satin ensembles out, and I really wanted to make my own Christmas skirt. I went over to Dressmaking Amóre, browsed her lovely patterns, and decided on the Vienna Wrap Skirt pattern. This is a wrap skirt, A-line shape, medium length, and great for satins. I chose a red poly satin that doesn't wrinkle and has a really gorgeous weight to it. I bought this at Chic Fabrics in New York. I was able to wash this on warm, delicate cycle because it's a poly. It doesn't really shrink, but I did this mostly in case it would bleed onto like my ironing board or onto other fabrics, because red is quite a vibrant color. And then I was even able to put it in the dryer afterwards. It wasn't very wet, but I put it in on medium temperature for just 15 minutes, and as you can see, the shine of the fabric was not compromised. I just hung it up to let out any wrinkles afterwards. But then this is a PDF pattern, so I had to assemble it. It takes me about an hour, depending on the size of the pattern. This is a medium length skirt, like I said, so it is quite a big piece that you're creating. The benefit though is that this pattern only has 3 pieces, so it's quite easy to keep track of, and it's very simple. So then I'm just cutting out the lines of the pattern pieces, and voila, that's all. Filling my iron up with some water, and I heard there's like a term for this. It's like decastizing or de something. If you know, write it in the comments, but it's basically just pressing your fabric before you cut out your pieces. I didn't have enough space on my table for the piece because it is quite a big pattern piece, so I did it on the kitchen floor. Don't worry, I swept before I did this, so nothing horribly dirty was getting on the fabric. I'm pretty tall, so I added some length. I added 3 inches to the bottom of the skirt all the way around. I just did that and pinned so that the fabric would stay together. And I just used the old school method of scissors and pins to cut out my fabric. This satin, while really gorgeous, is not too slippery. It was pretty easy to work with overall. And then I just cut out some interfacing. I used cotton sew-in interfacing. Here I am creating the pleats. So you mark those 2 lines and then you bring them together. The pattern has a really good diagram, so it's very easy to know which direction the pleat faces. Now here is my sewing space. It was so gorgeous outside, and I left from the big windows there. It is in the kitchen on the dining table, so the downside of that is that you have to kind of do a lot more cleaning up every time you want to use the table. Then I use my So Fine thread gloss for some hand sewing. This is the waistband. I like sewing interfacing. I feel like it doesn't bubble, and it's just kind of old school. Then you just sew over the tops of the pleats. Make sure you don't sew too far down because you don't want it to be farther than the seam allowance. And you use the normal stitch length and everything. This next step is very simple. You just fold the waistband in half, wrong sides together. But then, I had never seen this step before. She recommends to stretch it as you're sewing to kind of create a curved waistband shape. I don't know if it really worked for me, but you know, it's worth trying, I guess. Then to tackle the front edge of the skirt, you just do a double fold like a normal hem. I was very cautious with this, and I even decided to hand baste it before sewing so that it would really lie flat. I ended up not being perfectly happy with it, and so later you'll see I unpick it and redo it. And the difference was that I added some tissue paper underneath while sewing to stabilize it, and would definitely recommend doing that. So from watching the video tutorial, I got the idea of using a clapper, even though this is not a heavy fabric. I've typically only used it for wool coats, so that was new for me, and I really like it. Next, you're going to mark the half point of your waistband and the half point of your skirt. I think this is the center back. You line those up, and then you pin the rest of it, and make sure it's all even and ease it in and all that stuff. And then you sew. You might get these small tucks. That's okay, I think that's very normal. Just unpick those small areas and re-sew them. This little overhang piece, you finish that by folding right sides together, like so, and then you stitch along that front edge. Trim the little corners, and then flip it right side out. And voila, so pretty. So here's a bit more pressing. Remember to follow all the pressing steps. Don't skip any. Watch the video. That is one thing I think she could have made a bit more clear in the written instructions, is when you're supposed to press, specifically when creating the waistband. And you finish it off with a little top stitch. It's okay if this is not perfect. As you can see, mine was not, but I did not have the energy to redo it. Next up, you're going to take these bias strips and you're going to sew them together. You basically sew them along a diagonal, like the diagonal of the square from corner to corner. And you do that so that you can have a continuous 3-meter long piece. Fold it in half, right sides together, and sew. So now we enter the saga that was turning this tube right side out. It's 3 meters long, so that's quite a length to be turning inside out. I had this tool, but it was actually too big, so it didn't work. I tried to use this one, but the bottom prong was a bit too loose, so I wasn't sure if it would work. And also it was very short, so it was really difficult, this is my mom helping me, to get all the 3 meters onto that small tool. Somehow we did it, but it was not gonna budge. Then we had the idea of using something long and wiry, like in our case a cello string, to turn it inside out, but it did not work either. So I gave up for the night and I just let my skirt hang. This is a circle skirt, so there's parts of the hem that are on a bias and they stretch, so you really need to hang it up before you hem it. And this was me showing you the seam that I decided to unpick. I do that a lot when I'm in bed. If I can't sleep, it's usually because I know I need to unpick something. This is me trying again the next morning. Cutting new strips, fresh start. There's another method in the instructions where you basically make bias tape and top stitch it for your straps, but this did not work for me because my fabric did not press well enough. It had a mind of its own. So I looked up some methods online. I've heard of the bobby pin method for turning tubes right side out. Seamwork has an article on it, so definitely go check it out. You insert a bobby pin like this, one edge through the little cut you made, and then you put both edges through the normal tube, and you use this motion to get it started. And I was so shocked it worked. Here I am just doing a test piece because I wanted to make sure it worked before I spent a long time doing it. And then I was ready to try it on my actual thing, and it worked. It did take a very long time to turn it right side out, probably half an hour of just straight coaxing it through, but I would definitely recommend the bobby pin method. To finish the edges, she doesn't really talk about how to finish them, so since my fabric is poly, I just heat sealed them. It did turn black a little bit, but I'm not too fussed about that, as long as it doesn't fray, right? Then you make a buttonhole. I'm using my automatic buttonhole foot. I did a vertical buttonhole because my tie was maybe a bit thicker than hers was, I guess. It looks like that, and then you cut it open. Next up, mark the half point of the tie and the half point of the skirt again, and pin it down. You pin it in several areas so that this tie doesn't kind of drift upwards while you're wearing the skirt. Basically mini belt loops that are permanent. And then I had to include this beautiful shot of it hanging. Make sure you measure the hem of your skirt, so I clip the measuring tape to it, and then I can easily keep track of where I am while I'm measuring it. Because I'm using the banrol method, which I've talked about in my other videos, go check out my N6659 skirt video if you want a more detailed tutorial. Make sure that you have the right length, because this does not work if your piece of banrol is too small or too short. So I had 159 inches of length to account for, so I made sure to cut a really long piece of banrol. Then you make that little comb. I talk about it in the other video, go check it out. You stitch it on top of the right side and then you press it and then fold it over again, and it works as a stabilizer. It also means you don't have to use pins, and my hem was so beautiful. I think right now I'm just showing you a tester I was doing, but this is what I did on the real skirt. And then you're gonna need someone to help you with the hem. So I got my mom to, first we tried with the chocolate liner, but we ended up going to pins. Mark where you want it straight across all the way, and then I took out the pins and drew a mark so I could follow that line to cut out with scissors. And then you do those banrol hem steps like I said, and you get a beautiful hem at the end. Now, one of the corners where the front meets the hem was really nice and one was really bad. I just snipped it off and heat sealed it because I frankly didn't have time for that. And now it was time for the reveal. But first, make sure you go follow me on Instagram. I post styling videos of my outfits on there. And I also post stories and polls from time to time. Anyway, here's the finished skirt. I'm in front of my friend's Christmas tree because it was just so beautiful I had to. It's really nice. You can tie it in the front or the back. I do both. And it flows beautifully. It's so festive and really elegant. I love this length of skirt. I had a friend comment on that as well, that this length of skirt is just so effortless, I feel like, and you can wear it casually, fancy, whatever you want. If you made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. Please give it a like so I know, and I'll see you in the next one.